Hi there, I'm Henry Rossoff, and welcome to this episode of PIX on Politics Daily. Per usual, a lot going on in New York City politics and the national conversation right now. Of course, we here at PIX 11 are closely following investigative and political updates as they relate to the killing of young conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. We're also following very closely the mayoral race. The big development there that I'm actually working on today is the New York Times report from an editorial board meeting that Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani will apologize to police officers for past old statements, and a number of his political opponents have already come out casting doubt upon that, and that's the story I'm diving into today. But we do like to take time here on Picks on Politics Daily to focus on some other local issues, some issues of importance, some stuff that really impacts quality of life and safety. And today, we are talking about dollar vans. And to do that, we're going to bring in Council Member Selvena Brooks Powers of Queens, specifically the Rockaways. Council Member, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Henry, for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course. So I want to start at a slightly different place. You and I were chatting offline before we got going about this. You are the majority leader in the council, position of power.
Majority whip.
Majority whip. I apologize. Hey,
Yes,
thanks for correcting me. We got to be accurate.
no problem. We have an amazing majority leader.
Um, but you are in council leadership, to be clear, a position of leadership in the
Yes.
city. This is a moment of great political tension. Because we've seen some political violence, and we've previously seen political violence in this country targeting both conservative and liberal figures, Republicans and Democrats. So tell me, what is your messaging to the good people of New York right now in this moment of tension?
Well, thank you for the question. I will say that gun violence or any form of violence, anywhere and in any shape, is unacceptable. This is an issue that I personally have been extremely passionate about and talking about, whether it's gun violence happening locally here in New York City in our communities. I know a number of my colleagues in the council have received threats before because of political positions. Today, earlier, I received an email as well as some other members in the council with a threat that had to be investigated. And so it is difficult, right? Because when we come into these positions in public spaces, it's to make communities better. And so right now, it's important that if you have a difference of opinion, don't revert to or resort to, excuse me, using a weapon to be able to handle the situation. Step away from the computer, step away from the conversation, because as I say, and as I've said in past shooting responses, two lives at a minimum are going to be impacted when you let off a gun, the person who is holding it and the person that's on the receiving end of it. And so we have to make sure that we continue to try and tamper down the rhetoric so that everyone can make it home safely to their family.
Councilmember, thank you for addressing that very important topic. So let's move into now the topic you were brought in on. Dollar vans. City Council, it seems like finally, since forever, I mean, this is just kind of the wild west of public transportation out there in a number of districts, including your district, going to tackle them. What is the council doing right now as it pertains to quote unquote dollar vans?
So the commuter vans, and thank you for calling it dollar vans because I actually remember when they really did cost a dollar. But
But
our
inflation
commuter
hurts, doesn't it?
yes, it absolutely does. But in communities like the one that I grew up in and that I represent, they're a critical part of our city's transportation network, especially in neighborhoods that have limited transit options. And today, the license industry is on the verge of collapse. We have gone from a time where there was a little under 600 licensed commuter vans to about 38 today. And we want to be able to work to not only strengthen enforcement, but support licensed operators. And that's why a little over a year ago, I formed a working group that included commuter van owners, local unions, so TWU, Local 100, ATU. We have city agencies that are at the table, TLC, the Department of Transportation, so that we can have a holistic approach to this. And so last year we heard one of my other bills, which was Intro 939, which would allow street hails to take place. And on Monday, we are hearing within the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure two more bills that would complete this package, Intro 1347 as well as Intro 1346. Intro 1347 will provide stronger enforcement against illegal vans because out of the working group, what we have heard from the licensed operators as well as the unions is safety and concern with that. And we also are looking to do a DOT study of the industry to see how, instead of making these two sectors, the commuter vans and our public transportation network, compete, how do we create a system that fills a much needed gap, increases service and access to transportation for all. And so I'm really looking forward to the hearing, to making sure that we can hear from the public, we can hear from key stakeholders on the record in terms of enhancing these pieces of legislation.
So this is historically, as I'm understanding correctly, and talking to people who've had to rely on these vans, sort of this gray area the city has allowed to exist, right? Because the commuter transportation options are not there. So yes, while you're saying there's a certain number of licensed ones, we all know and have somewhat come to accept a certain number of unlicensed ones because they just make life easier for folks. So is the goal to finally, instead of just pretending that this doesn't exist, to bring it all under one tent, one umbrella, regulate it, make sure it's safe, and also provide that much needed option? Is that kind of the end goal here, if I'm understanding correctly?
Absolutely, because to your point, as the licensed industry shrinks, unlicensed vans have filled that gap. And when they operate, they're operating without safety inspections, background checks, or insurance in a lot of cases. And that creates a dangerous condition for passengers, pedestrians, and other drivers. So we want to make sure that we are working to put an end to that while still recognizing the importance of the commuter vans in communities like Southeast Queens and certain parts of Brooklyn and other parts of the city.
So where does it go from here? You mentioned there was already a hearing on your first bill, and then we have more hearings coming up. Is the hope to have, and what have you talked to with the speaker about this, a kind of a full package vote at some point before, say, the end of the year? Is that kind of where this is going, or what we should expect?
So our goal is to be able to hear these next two bills and to be able to usher through the full package, which would give a full balance to this issue. So it's not just looking at creating opportunity for the commuter vans to have street hails, while at the same time is not looking to just focus on enforcement. And so this is really for us to be thoughtful in the conversation of this industry that has been significantly impacted over the course of the years due to high rising costs in insurance and other dynamics that have really seen a decline in the licensed commuter van operation. And so, we're working within the council, my colleagues who are sponsors on these pieces of legislation, the stakeholders, the unions, so that we can be thoughtful around this much needed issue.
What would be the positive result from the study you're also hoping to do, kind of to merge the coverage with the MTA's bus network? Because I can't imagine you want less buses in these communities that are already, quote unquote,
Absolutely
transit
not.
deserts or underserved, or however you want to phrase it. So what is the hope from that study?
Thank you for that. And as the daughter of a former um, bus operator myself, I have a tremendous amount of love and respect for bus operators just in general from a personal side. And as someone who grew up in Southeast Queens, went to high school in Manhattan, and had to rely on taking either a bus or at the time a dollar van to three trains to get to school, I know how critical it is for us to get this right. And so the DOT study in particular came out of the working group at the request of the Department of Transportation, looking to do a study every 4 years. Right now, they compile data, but there's specific data information that they feel would be extremely helpful to inform commuter van routes and ensuring that the vans are complementing, not competing with our public transit network. Because while we continue and will continue to fight for greater access to our public transportation buses, there are still communities that do not and likely will not have that extended service. So, how do we utilize the commuter vans to connect them to our public transit network and create this ecosphere where New Yorkers are able to get from point A into point B more timely, more efficiently, and more affordably?
Well, council member, that's all the time we have for today. But if before I go, if I could propose a fourth bill to make them cost $1 again, that would be fantastic.
I think you would have so much support on that bill.
but unfortunately, can't operate a van on that now, as we all know.
Right.
Councilmember Selvena Brooks Powers, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And that'll do it for this episode of Picks on Politics Daily. I'm Henry Rossoff. Of course, you can catch the Big Politics show, Picks on Politics, airing tonight, Friday at 6:30, with a re-air on Sunday morning. My colleague Dan Mannarino will be hosting that. I'll be joining as well for part of a panel discussion. And that'll do it for this episode. You have a great day.